The Shadow of the Erdtree DLC for Elden Ring is on the horizon, and if prior FromSoft DLCs are any indication, you can bet that it will come packed with brand new, unforgettable boss battles that will surely test even the most experienced Elden Ring players. As we look forward to its release, we figured what better time than now to look back at the base game and revisit some of these boss battles by ranking them in terms of the top 10 most difficult Elden Ring bosses before the DLC. Before we begin, a quick note about these rankings. They were sourced from thousands of Elden Ring fans on IGN via a faceoff that we ran last month. We compiled a list of the 25 most notoriously tough bosses in Elden Ring, and then had fans vote through a gauntlet of matchups that pit two of those bosses against each other, with fans choosing which one they believe is harder. The ones that won the most matchups are the ones that made this top 10. So let's go ahead and see what the IGN audience believes are the 10 hardest bosses in Elden Ring, starting with a 54.1% win rate in its matchups, the Fire Giant comes in at number 10, just edging by Astel, Natural Born of the Void. It's not hard to see why he made the list. Fire Giant is one of the later bosses in the game and is mostly difficult due to the fact that if your vigor isn't up to snuff, he will basically one-shot you with almost every single attack in his arsenal. It's also a unique boss fight in that a lot of it takes place while riding Torrent, which limits your ability to dodge or quickly change direction. And in addition to that, it's a fight that demands a lot of patience, especially in its final phase, where you have to be very careful about picking your spots to get in and do some damage in order to avoid getting flattened by his tendency to roll over you.
Upon my name as Godfrey, the first Elden Lord.
Godfrey is one of my personal favorite boss battles of Elden Ring, and it finds itself in the number 9 spot with 54.2% of its matchups won. It's a two-phase boss fight, with each phase packing its own unique challenges. Godfrey is dangerous for his extremely wide-sweeping axe attacks, but also his ground-shaking stomps, which often are best avoided by jumping instead of rolling. Once he takes enough damage, he'll regress to his true form of Hoarah, who has a nasty tendency to trick you into rolling early, only to grab you during the recovery of your dodge and powerbomb you into the ground. It is a tough and grueling fight, one that really demands that you learn the movesets of essentially two wildly different bosses, but at least you don't have to fight both of them at the same time. Speaking of, with a 54.3% win rate in their face-offs, the Godkin Duo come in at number 8. Individually, the Godkin Noble and the Godkin Apostle aren't that bad. Together though, they're a nightmare, especially when you have to kill them multiple times within the same boss fight. It's a fight that can certainly be made easier if you're able to bring in a powerful Spirit Ash or summon that can hold the aggro of the one that you're not fighting. But it's very hard to keep that summon alive for the whole fight, and thus at some point you likely will have to contend with both of them at once. Fortunately, the arena is designed to your advantage, allowing you to put a pillar between you and one of the bosses to at least avoid getting hit by one of their hugely damaging black fireballs. The penultimate boss fight of the game surprisingly comes in at the 7th spot. Redon may feel like the actual final boss of the game due to his similarities to other final boss fights such as Gwyn and the Soul of Cinder, and he's about as tough as those fights as well. There are no real gimmicks or unusual mechanics to this boss battle. It is just a straight up fight. You either have to learn how to properly avoid and punish all of his attacks, or simply have a build that's strong enough to just basically bully him to death. Coming in at number 6 is Star Scourge Redon, with a 61.2% win rate. The fight against Redon is quite unlike anything else in Elden Ring, and like the Fire Giant, it's very much a stat check. If you come into this fight underleveled, you will find yourself getting one-shotted with just about everything that Redon throws at you. Throughout the fight, you'll want to summon as much help as you can. Redon's attacks all pretty much sweep a wide area, so you can never get careless even if his attention isn't on you. But it's still preferable to have his aggro on someone else. Perhaps the hardest part of the Redon fight is when he's low on life and will summon these giant rocks to hurl at you. These rocks will almost certainly take you out, and they're very hard to avoid, so it becomes a game of either killing him before he's able to kill you, or being able to maneuver around the environment so that the rocks hit the ground. Barely beating out Redon with a 61.3% win rate is Moog, the Lord of Blood, an optional boss battle hidden in the Mohg Palace, and apparently the site where you'll be accessing the Shadow of the Erdtree DLC. The really difficult part of the Moog fight is of course his curse. After he puts 3 rings on you, he will start chanting and cause massive bleed damage to you 3 times in a row in quick succession. And worst of all, it will heal him as well. The rest of the fight isn't a pushover either, with Moog having big attacks that cover a lot of range and hit very hard. He's an optional boss fight for a reason for sure. One of the final regions in the game, Crumbling Faro Missoula, is no place for the faint of heart, due in no small part to 2 extremely powerful bosses. With a 63.2% win rate, the optional boss, Dragon Lord Plasudasax, is a force to be reckoned with. Maybe you've gotten used to killing a few dragons by now, but you likely aren't ready for the 2-headed lord of all dragons. You aren't even safe trying to distract him with a spirit summon, since he can pivot one of his heads to shoot behind him. And if you thought that his size would make him slow, you're definitely not going to have a fun time when he takes to the skies, dive bombing you with no warning before teleporting around you with incredibly fast and powerful electric claw swipes. The final boss of Elden Ring comes in at number 3 with a 64.2% win rate. I think it's fair to say that Elden Beast is not a favorite boss of many in Elden Ring, and speaking personally, it's my least favorite, but it's hard to argue its place in the top 3. Its attacks hit like an absolute truck, there's the added stress of the fact that if you die, you have to beat Radigan again just to get another shot at the Elden Beast, and the frustration of the fact that it takes forever to just run and get within striking distance of this boss. It's a tough fight, though not for the same kind of reasons that landed a lot of the other bosses on this list. With a 67.9% win rate, Malakith, the Black Blade, winds up at number 2. And this is a boss that's here for all the right reasons. Malakith is an absolute monster, with a moveset that has him jumping all over the arena, pressuring you with lengthy flurries and combos without a clear sign of when it's actually safe to attack, and fast projectiles that force you to stay on your guard even if you're far away. Fortunately, once again, the arena is in your favor. Pillars can be used to your advantage to block projectiles, and they can be used to force him to attack air while you wait for him on the other side of a pillar. He's a tricky boss to read, and any mistakes will be heavily punished, which is why he's a good fit for the number 2 spot. Second only to...
Heed my words. I am Malenia, Blade of Mikola. And I have never known defeat.
Millennia takes the number 1 spot, winning 91.1% of all of her face-offs. Just her moveset alone makes this a difficult fight, but what really catapults it to the top of all Elden Ring boss fights is the fact that she heals a substantial amount of life every time she hits you. This generally means that it's not enough to just out-damage her. You also have to know how to flawlessly avoid her attacks as well. That, or just be really good at parrying, or have someone to summon who knows how to do either of those 2 things. And those are the 10 hardest Elden Ring bosses according to IGN fans. What do you think? Did we miss any? Let us know in the comments, and make sure to check out our other Elden Ring guide videos to help you get ready for Shadow of the Erdtree in June. Thanks for watching, and for everything else, keep it here on IGN.
The mark of a true